Right, welcome back. Thank you for being very patient with me. I have had quite the week. So, what we left off with last time is our map with some very basic colours on it. I have been lazy, and I confess I have not coloured in my castles. I'm going to leave those separate, as a matter of fact. What I have done is, so for now I'm going to actually just hide those three. What I have done is I have now compressed all of my color down to two layers. I've now got a water layer and my land layer, and I'm going to show you why in a little bit. But before we continue, the real trick, in my opinion, on how to change a map from what it looks like at the moment, which is fairly basic, to something that's a lot more interesting, is when we start bringing in overlays. And overlays are literally just different textures. So I've gone along onto the internet and I've found a whole bunch of different textures. I've found old paper. So you see, if I put the old paper at the color level, the map suddenly looks like it's been drawn on ancient parchment. And we will use some of this maybe. And I've found some leather, which we might use. You never know. Put the leather down. Well, it's certainly not nearly as legible as the paper texture, but one just doesn't know what one's going to use it for. So I've just got a whole bunch of textures, and what I like to do is just bring them in and play around with them, see which ones give me the more interesting effect. I'm literally just really grabbing and stretching them to fit our canvas. Because you're not being commercial with it, you can kind of grab anything that you find out there on the net. And really you can explore the full range. You never know what piece of a texture you're going to use, because you're going to see what we're going to do now. So I'm just grabbing all of these different things. I'm just slapping them in there, just looking to see which ones really work the nicest. I'm not going to bother that one. Oh, there we go. So let's put this last one in. That's kind of interesting, actually, the way it looks. And now it really is just a case of elimination. So I kind of like that one. That one's all right. This one's quite nice because it's kind of got striations in it, which makes it look almost like it's written on bark or something. But I'm going to cut it out. This one's kind of cool. It looks torn and frayed around the edges, so we'll leave that one. This one looks too much like a paint effect, so I'm going to get rid of that one. The leather we have had a problem with, but I think if we drop its opacity down, it can add just a little bit of something interesting. And these are the tools we're going to talk about here. Your layer, what would you call them? Modifiers, how your layer interacts with the layers below it. So if we put it on multiply, for example, you see it changes tone a little bit. Color burn, it changes tone quite a lot. And so that is the next process, is to cycle through different kinds of additive or non-additive effects to create your own sense of your own unique kind of paper. And each layer, you literally come to each layer and you work out, well, if I use multiply, it creates quite a nice dark kind of color. I've got that leather texture still coming through. I've got those burn marks on the paper. Oh, that might be even nicer. It's a bit more subtle. Yes, I like that one. And you just literally turn them on and off, and you just look around and see what each one brings to the party. If I take it away, oh, it does add quite a bit. Let's just carry on with her layer applicators. And this is really where you can play and just go mad. And sort of see what you can come up with. And there is really no right or wrong answer. It is literally just playing around with different effects until you get the one that you are happiest with. And you'll see what we do a little bit later once we've finished with this. We're just trying different effects. Oh, that's kind of nice. It's subtle, maybe too subtle. That's definitely not going to work for us. That is kind of interesting though, isn't it? It's just slightly dropping out the saturation in the picture. I think I'm going to stick with that. So I'm kind of happy with all of these different layers looking the way they are. So I'm going to merge them down into one layer. Oh, don't know what I got the beep for. This thing likes to beep at me. Now if I bring the color above it, it stands out quite a bit. And of course the ocean is just going to wash it out completely. So now we start to look at what effects are we going to apply to the ocean and to the land to make that sit nicely on our background. Or what effect are we going to place on our background to make it stand out on our color. So again, we just go through the different effects. Darken doesn't do much, multiply doesn't do much, color burn, etc., etc. And we're just looking for, well, that's got a bit of our colors in there, hasn't it? That's under screen. Let's keep going. And the important thing to remember is that we have got it as different layers. So we can really just play around with each one. Oh, that's very interesting. There's your map in autumn, I suppose. Doesn't really give you much differentiation, does it? Anyway, so we can really play around with these effects. I'm actually going to turn the water off just for now, so we can sort of see how these layers are working with each other, because we're really interested in getting the continent to look right first. That's in my opinion anyway. So that, to me, if I duplicate this layer, duplicate, and bring it underneath, then I've got to change it back to being normal. Now we've got two of the same layer, layer 7. I'm going to rename that now so we don't get confused. We're going to call this texture, and we're going to call this texture 2. That's not looking too bad, actually. I could live with that, I think. I'm a little bit worried that my colors are still looking a little bit painty. If you see, the edges are still quite harsh. So now I can come here and I can go to filter and I can go to blur and I can choose Gaussian blur or Gaussian blur, however you want to pronounce it, and choose different values so that I'm basically breaking up these harsh edges. If I go radically, you'll see that I'm losing all kind of detail in my picture, which I don't want. I just want to soften up so that we go from a very hard edge to something a little more subtle. It'll just make it feel just a little bit more like a map. So I'm going to do that, 6.4 on my map, and that's not looking too bad. Maybe I want a bit more color in there, so I'm going to duplicate the layer, bring it above the map layer. Now you can see how it looks. It's this funny sort of thing. And now with this layer, I can again run through my, what if I make it a multiply layer? So we're getting to see all those colors. To me, it's a bit dark. I don't think it's very clear. And it's not sort of looking old world map-like to me. And the thing is always to turn it on and off as well, to make sure that you are actually making a difference by adding or subtracting this. Yeah, we're getting a bit more color in there. I might tone that down to 50% opacity. Alright, so that's something that I could live with. We've definitely got that leather texture coming in there, giving it a bit of paper. There's a burn there, which is kind of nice. Very organic as well, which makes it quite different. Okay, I think we're nearly there. Now I just need to get my water in, and for my water I can put it above that layer. If you remember correctly, we have another texture layer down here. Change the water maybe to 60%, and change the way that it interacts with our background. We can play around. Well, multiply is not bad. Let's have a look at what we can see. Soft light is not bad either. Yeah, I think soft light is kind of where we want to be, although sometimes you have to cycle through them looking for your best options. This is darker color. I'm going to throw the same Gaussian filter onto the water so that it just softens it a little bit. I think I could live with that. I think I could. I really don't have a problem. Oh, maybe that's better. Linear burn. We get to sense of deeper waters as we go further out. Yeah, all right, let's live with that. Okay, so now we've got a map which on the face of it we look at and we go, well, this green's very green, isn't it? Well, we just come to our adjustment layers and choose maybe hue and saturation, and we can drop out the saturation on the green. We can make it lighter, we can make it darker, which might make it better, especially since we're dropping the lightness value. We can roll it a little bit so that it's a bit more red or it's a bit more bluey. I kind of think this works better. And of course, remember, we've got another layer up here which we can manipulate as well. So if I'm on lightness and I darken that, is it better or worse? I don't know. If we drop the saturation out, well, we were really going for the saturation, weren't we? So then maybe we need to make it darker, shift those greens more towards the reds and things. Is that a map that's looking interesting? I think it is. I think you can clearly see it. To me, it looks like a very old kind of map. And again, it just depends on what you play with, what you turn on, what you don't turn on, how many layers of a thing you've got. It really is up to you. Then, of course, the fun part happens, and that to me is where we then bring back our cities with our city color. Let's go down here now. And again, it's up to you where you want to put this in your chain of events. I've got city color being up here, but I know for a fact that it should sit down here underneath our first texture layer so that it matches in tone what's happened to the rest of the map. But I'm not going to do that just yet, and the reason being, of course, I have to spread these around like wildfire. So I'm actually going to come to my castle layer and compress it down. I know, compress it down with my castle color layer, and then copy it. So I'm going to draw a little mask around it because I just want it. I'm going to copy it, and then I want to delete the rest of the city, so I'm going to make a mask, invert it, press delete, and that gets rid of all of the other castles. I've got it in memory, so now I can just go Control V and place these things wherever I want them to be. Put one there, and we'll grab this one, put it in there because we specifically wanted that to be there. We'll come over here, drop this one down there, and again, it's up to you as to how many you want, how far apart they should be dispersed, and we get to the exciting parts shortly, in my opinion. Let's see, castle, everywhere. One for you, one for you, one for you. There's probably going to be a castle up here, because this looks like a nice land. We definitely want a castle up here, because we built that little land for a reason. There'll probably be another one there. And there's probably one down here. And probably one a little bit further down. Maybe there. How are we looking? Alright, let's put some down here. Boom, 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 boom. Probably needs to be about there, I would say. And one more in there. Right. So now we have a whole lot of castles, which we will compress down into one layer so that we can take it and put it, oops, so we can adjust it, sorry, it's the way that it's interacting with the map, however we want it. There we go. Hard light works for me. But you can also decide to just leave it as a solid. Oops. Oh dear, what have I done? Hard light. Is that right? No, that's not right. What did I do? There we go. You can also just choose to leave it as a hard color, because ultimately the cities and things are really where your player's focus should be, and it's alright if they look slightly different. But again, it's entirely up to you. It is your map. You can do with it as you wish. What you now want to do is create a new layer, and we're going to call this banner. And I'm going to show you very quickly how to make a banner, because this is how we're going to label our cities and things. It's not how I've done it in the past. What I've done is I've taken text and made it a sort of a gray color, and then you type in here. Once you've changed your font size down to something usable, let's say 12, and we type in here Kaya Branach, for example, and if we're going to go with sort of black, if we're happy with that font, I don't know if we are. It's also a bit big in terms of name, so let's drop that down to 7, very small now. So that's font size 7. So if we zoom out, can we read it? And that's the big question, is can you read it? 7's a bit small. I'm going to make it size 10. And so you could go with some very simple naming, just like that. And I would advise that you go with simple kind of text. Don't kind of go extreme. Something like that is quite bold. Is it legible? Well, that's a question. Something too thin might not be very legible. Handwriting, well, maybe it looks like a bit more of a cartographer's map, but maybe that's more of a cartographer's kind of style, where it's a little bit more gothic. That is an American style font. You don't want to go there. That's too compressed. That's a beautiful font, but can you read what it says? I certainly can't. And your players certainly won't be able to either. So try and find a font which works best for your style of map, but don't be so focused that your style outweighs your practical. Always make sure that it's a practical kind of font to read. It's nice and clear, it's bold, it kind of makes sense, because the last thing you want is to have created this beautiful map and then not be able to read it. And it happens, sadly. It really happens. I kind of like that. I think that kind of fits to a degree. And if I zoom out, yeah, Kaya Branach all the way. Okay, so that's one way of labeling your cities, and it can be quite effective. And if you're going to then go mad and be like myself and you label everything, then maybe simpler is better. However, there is another way of doing things, and I'm going to show you very quickly because it's quite a fun little thing, and the tutorial's long already anyway. So you're going to create, and I wouldn't know how to do this in any other program, by the way, so just bear that in mind. So you're going to create a square. Now, let's say we want our human kingdom to be blue. There's a square. I've made a new layer. We're going to call this flag. This is our flag. And it's going to be blue and yellow will be the principal colors of this kingdom. So I'm just going to very quickly here make up what might be the official standard of that nation with blue and yellow. Just using the mask select tool here, draw out some shapes and choose a yellow. There it is. Thank you very much. Paint that yellow. So it's kind of a Swedish look, really, I suppose. Now, that does not look like a flag. And that is because a flag usually has shadows. Now, the easiest way I have found to create shadows for a flag is to take your brush tool, select black, make it a certain size, that's a good size, and then make its opacity 40%. And then you're just doing this. Random lines that as you draw over, some will be darker and some will be lighter. Now that I've done size 40, I'm now going to do size 17. And I'm going to do the same thing. And then I'm going to do size 9. And size 9 I'm going a little bit crazier with in the shape, so it's a little bit more hectic. Trust me, I'm not mad, he said. Then I'm going to go to size 4 and really just scribble in the sort of, you see, I'm trying to follow the bigger initial black lines, but it won't kill me if I don't. Then I take the whole thing, I go to filter, I go to blur, I go to Gaussian blur, and you can already start to see the effect that's coming through. I blur it slightly, then I come around to my adjustments, I go to levels and push up the levels of that layer. Apparently there's no effect. Curiouser and curiouser. Anyway, I'm not too concerned because I can come to that same piece, select white, change my size to say 12 and come in here, and just where I sort of see highlights kicking in, I'll draw that in there very roughly. Gaussian blur it again, maybe even again. Then I will draw, well, I'll select the flag shape, go back to my shadows, delete, oops, remember to invert your mask so you're just deleting around the edges. Then here I will change its layer value to something like darken is not bad, multiply is better. So I'll change it to multiply. I'm going to see if I can adjust the brightness maybe and the contrast. So the more I push it, there's a sweet spot there somewhere. There we go. And if I go Gaussian blur again, and I do about 4, then because it works around the edges as well, which doesn't look very nice, just expand it a little bit. Probably not the, I've probably gone about it this a silly way. Probably an easier way out there. Yes, apply. Draw my little box. Oops. Always forget, don't I? Control, invert it so that it's sitting just like that. Now it still doesn't look like a flag, but it's not bad. I'm now going to drop the shadows onto my flag, compress it together. Then with Photoshop, if I select a bounding box corner, I can choose a deformer. And that allows me to make the most spectacular flag shapes really easily. We want this to be like a... Come on. There we go. And we want it to feel like it's ballooning in the wind, perhaps. Come in there, come in there. And of course it's pulling away from a flagpole, presumably. Something like that. Grab that point there. Grab this point here. Say, okay, and there we have a fairly decent, in my opinion, flag. And of course here we can then go layer blending options and choose, or I could bevel it if we really wanted to feel like it had an edge to it. I'm not entirely sure if that would be applicable. I don't often see edges on flags. But what we do want to do is we want to do a drop shadow so that it sticks out quite nicely. And then maybe we want the color to pop out a bit more. So let's go and adjust our levels. Pump that blue brightness right up. Maybe make those shadows a little bit more contrasty. A bit darker maybe. Oh, that looks quite nice, doesn't it? Now onto this, we can then shrink the flag down if we so like. Put it here next to our city or under our city. You can make it narrower as well. And really just have fun with putting it underneath the word banner. Of course now this is illegible. It usually is. So it really is now just a case of working out saying, well, you know what, let's make it a white or a grey or a whatever the case might be. We just go to our text. If we make it white, definitely not legible. So what I usually do is I make my text grey and then I go into the blending options, and we can add a bevel and an emboss if we really feel like it. We can add a drop shadow, which usually makes it stick out. Let's do a gradient overlay. You can get all sorts of presets that you can find to make it look more gold, less gold, not gold, however you want it to read. We can do satin overlays where we make it definitely golden in color. You know, so the sky really is the limit, and it is just about finding what works best for your map or for the design that you've gone with to make your text stand out. And again, it is about making it stand out because after all, I mean, you want people to be able to see the name of the place fairly clearly and to know that they have arrived at Caer Branoch. So you can do that kind of effect if you really want to. You don't have to do the flag if you don't like. I just showed you how to do the flag so that you got an idea of just how much fun you can have in terms of printing up your map. So then the final thoughts is now you return to the tutorial that I gave you on how to name your map, how to work with your information on why is there a Caer Branoch here, or well, before you even name it, why is there a kingdom here? What is that kingdom? Who lives there? We said that there's going to be bridges between all of these islands. Is it elves who do it? If it's elves, are they friendly with these wood elves? Are they wood elves? Perhaps it's humans who live in the middle of the forest. Why are they a conclave of druids? Are there fishermen that control this bay here? Why are there no other towns here? Now you start asking and answering those questions, which for me is a lot of fun. Who is based here? Why are they based here? What is it that they need? What is it that they want? Their overland travel is difficult because of the swamp. They've got the sea that they can use. The glacier is obviously pushing in, causing problems. So how do we use this information? How do we use our storytelling ability to make this world come alive? Because now you've got a very, very interesting world map, in my opinion. It is something that is alive. It's got reasons. It needs to exist. Fill it in, and there is your world map.